Hey friends, happy Monday, 21st of June. What, second day of summer, I think? Also a memorial of Saint Aloysius Gonzaga, not just the patron saint of NCAA basketball, right? It's good to be with you today. Hope you're doing well. I'll give you a reflection, and then I want you to click the link, read the readings for the day. They're on the sidebar if you haven't read them yet. Read them prayerfully, then turn off the screen. Spend a little bit of time in prayerful reflection before you move on with the rest of your day. Let me tell you a bit about Saint Aloysius, nice name. Died 1591. I think that makes him third generation in the Jesuits. So they're kind of, in the 16th century, they were probably fairly well established by that point. He was well connected, royal families in Italy and in Spain. He would have been, from the upper crust of society, well connected, money, and he gave it all up to be poor and to follow the way of the Jesuits. He was studying to be a Jesuit priest, and a plague broke out. Not sure what the transmissible disease was, not sure where he was exactly. You could look that stuff up. Instead of fleeing to the countryside, as was the standard practice to escape what they thought of as the bad air or the bad humors, he stayed and he took care of plague victims and himself fell sick from whatever the contagious disease was. Has been declared a patron of Jesuit scholastics, but also young people and students because of that connection to transmissible diseases and plagues. He was invoked certainly by those who were caring for and those who were dying of AIDS while that was an epidemic, and people have looked to him in the midst of this pandemic, right? Those who have given their lives serving others, and those who have also taken care of watching how they're transmitting it to others. Different people have interpreted St. Aloysius differently in the last 16 months. So that's a little bit about St. Aloysius Gonzaga. Let me tell you about the readings for today. We're still in the Sermon on the Mount in the Gospel for a little bit longer. You might recognize that in the first reading we have switched from the second letter to the Corinthians. Now we are into the book of Genesis. I meant to look this up and I forgot. I apologize. The book of Genesis, if you look, we're starting with the Abram cycle. So Abraham and Sarah. That's, I think, chapter 12 in Genesis. The first 11 chapters are what are called the primeval history, the ancient history, or the ancient understandings of Israel. Stories about creation, stories about the flood. The last story is the dispersal of the languages through the Tower of Babel. And then we get a genealogy and we move into the Abram cycle. And scholars generally see this as a break, moving from kind of ancient ideas of their origins into some of their patriarch stories. Who are we as a people? Well, let me tell you about our great grandfather and grandmother who were wandering Arameans from the land of Ur. And that's what I want to point out. The very beginning of the story of Abraham, or Abram and Sarah, it's all about a call. They're established, they're comfortable, they're living their life, they know who they are, and then they're called to set forth from the land of their kinsfolk to the land that God will show them. They set out in faith, leaving behind what's comfortable, what's known, because the Lord has called them in order to bless them in the future. And we get some of this stuff. I can't remember. I can't remember if we get their ages today or if we're going to catch that in the next couple of readings. Suffice it to say, these two are old. I think Abram is oftentimes associated as 90 or 100, and Sarai 10 years younger than him. I really like that. Like, as I'm entering as I've been in middle age for a bit, recognizing some of the challenges at times to change, to be flexible, to be adaptable. And so the idea of these old ones setting out in faith is delightful for me. How about for us? Where is God calling us to be flexible, adaptable, to be made new, to change? Where are we receiving that call to set out in faith to a new land that we have not seen, metaphorically, trusting that God is moving us there with great power, great vigor? Just a word about the gospel, some continuation of the Sermon on the Mount. Lots of times our attention gets drawn to this splinter and beam in the eye. What I'd invite us to pay attention to, though, is Jesus, who a number of different times in the gospel says, the measure with which you measure will be the measure that is measured back to you. And, I think we recognize that in our human interactions, but to be mindful of that with God, right? This is a bit of that language of theology, worldview of abundance versus scarcity. If you see that everything is gift and that everything is good, you're probably going to share that as gift and as abundant. Likewise, if we see everything as having to wring it from the ground and must be hoarded, we're probably going to measure that way. And we might experience that in the midst of the world as well. If we're hard to forgive, Jesus warns us we may have a hard time receiving forgiveness. We may have a hard time receiving forgiveness from our God. Perhaps we pray for an expanded capacity, an expanded heart, an expanded measure, that we might measure out love, presence, forgiveness, generosity with a great measure, that we may be enlarged and ready to receive it in turn. All right, pray with Abram and Sarai as they set forth. Pray in course of that measure, the Sermon on the Mount. Click that link, read those readings prayerfully, spend some time with the Lord before you doom scroll through the rest of the social media feed. Let's be praying for each other and mindful of those that are having a hard time. All right, God bless, friends. Happy Monday.